So yeah, without further ado, my name is Whitney Marin. I'm a customer success manager at Hivebrite, and I'm joined today by Erica Surace, the co-founder of D2 Collective. So welcome, Erica.
Thank you so much, Whitney, for the introduction. And yeah, very excited to be here with you guys talking about how to launch a community.
Awesome. Okay. Do you have any questions before we get started?
No, I think we're good. Very, very nice to see that there's so many people in the audience at different stages of the community building process, because I think it's going to be just very interesting to exchange and to share more about the experience of launching the D2 Collective.
Awesome. So I guess we'll go ahead and get started. My very first question to you. Oh, before we get started as well, I want to mention that we have both the chat and the Q&A box. So if you all have questions throughout the conversation, definitely ask in Q&A, and then I can review them at the end of our chat today. So awesome. Yeah. So Erica, can you tell me a little bit more about the D2 Collective? What is its mission and kind of what community are you serving?
Yeah, absolutely. So just a little bit about me. My name is Erica, based in Amsterdam, originally from Italy. Together with my co-founder, Nasti, we launched the D2 Collective, which is a global value-based community for those working in tech. So we are both kind of from the tech industry, and we wanted to bring together everybody working in all the different departments. This is a bit of a snapshot of the community. We have now over 950 members. We launched in October 2022. So we are, not even 6 months old. And our members are from all size tech. We've been doing that, engaging them on Hivebrite community platform, and with a strong calendar of events, podcasts, and happy to tell more about it later with the other questions.
Very cool. And how long have you been running the community? Did you mention?
Yeah, so 6 months, a bit less than 6 months. So we launched October 1st, 2022. And we have about 950 members, which is exciting because we were starting just from our network. And and our members are mainly based in 3 hubs, which are Amsterdam, London, and Dublin.
Very cool. So as you were kind of thinking about building your community, what were the universal questions that you asked yourself? Like, why does this community need to exist?
Yeah, that's such a good question, because we were thinking so a bit of a background. So the community started because, of course, there's a new way of working. Everybody's working either hybridly or remotely. There's not many chance in the industry to connect with others. So we said, okay, we want to bring the community together so that people can exchange, make meaningful connection as they would at work in the office, but in a more kind of informal setting. And of course, when anyone thinks about a community, oh yes, my community is needed just because it's my idea and I want to do it. But then I think there's very important questions that you should ask yourself before starting. So for us, some of them is that, is there a community like this before? Is it already existing? And what makes us different from other players? Because there are some other players, for example, in tech communities. And for us, for example, the answer there was that they were more on the professional side, doing courses. And for us was more just making meaningful connection, and that kind of, idea of making friends at work. How can we replicate that with a community? So differentiating was very important. Also, what's going to make us different? What's going to make people join? I think with communities, many times we think we know the need of the people that we're catering to, but it's important to go back and say, who is the target audience? What do they do? What do they need? What do they do? Why is this useful for them? What would people pay for example, if there's a monetization component, of course, we do have. And also, so this was very important, before launching, kind of to go into those questions, how much people would pay for that? Also, all of these questions and trialing. So I think one of the best things is that interview people that are potential members of your community, get in touch with them. And also if you are the person that could be part of your community, don't stop there, just go further. So I think that's something that I would suggest. So what we did in the months prior to launch, we started brainstorming with friends and saying, hey, we have this in mind. We want to launch this. What do you think? What would be useful for you? So when you put together kind of your offering, I think that's very important to know what people need and want and are willing to pay for, if there's, of course, membership or events monetization or anything.
Yeah, I love that idea because, you're using your community to help you build the community. You're getting their input, you're figuring out what they need, and then you're basically delivering that. That's such a smart strategy to do that kind of research beforehand. And what would you say was kind of like the most critical stage of your launch? Was it kind of before the launch, once people join the community?
Yeah, I think it's just before launching, you need to be very prepared. You need to have just very clear ways of what does preparation looks like, because of course it looks different and some organization, they are very strong, I think, on prepping, but then you also need to be able to run your community. So I think every stage is kind of its challenges, to be honest. When we were prepping to launch, I think something that was we were really thinking about, how much is the membership going to be? Or what are we going to do about our offering? And then when we actually launch, we found kind of new issues emerging and new challenges. So we had to tackle them. So I think being in the community business, it's one of the most exciting things for sure. But it's also it's not for the faint of heart, as they say, there's a lot of tackling and being very open-minded in tackling new challenges that might arise in a creative way. I'd add.
That's a good point too, because there can be some unexpected things that happen. I guess I'm curious, what's the dynamic with you and your co-founder? Are there certain things that you maybe manage and that she manages?
We've been both pretty hands-on. I think we have of course a different set of skills, so that really helps in kind of doing different things. But until now, we mostly did kind of the same things, both of us, just to accelerate. So the idea was really to accelerate. Sorry, I missed a bit. But for example, when we launched the community, we realized, okay, how are we gonna acquire new members? Mm-hmm. And so one of the part that was very important there was, okay, what is the strategy? And if I only do part of it, we can go at 1x, but if we both do it, we can go 2 times faster. So our main focus was, of course, growing members in the first months, because if you don't have people in your community, then what is the value of joining the community? So that was kind of where we were.
For sure, yeah. And then do you have any best practices that you'd like to share during these first few months as you started running your community?
During these first few months, I mean, we did a lot. We did quite a bit in, so I think we did a very heavy use of LinkedIn. Of course, our network is a professional network, so that for us was very important. We shared also more on creating content. So I think this is one of the challenges that's mostly underestimated or most underrated from people who are as community managers, because you're I'm just going to launch the community. I have my community platform. I have some people who are joining. The community is going to run itself, and it's not. So you still need to engage. So part of our engagement happens online, but I say most of it happens offline with the events. So we do have events happening in all the different cities in Europe. Some of the events are community-led, and some of them are just led by us. And one of the most important things is that you need those events to happen for people to connect. And so on one end, having the community and the platform is great, but you also need to put in the work in creating the content. So for us, one of the content staples was events, of course. We have a members only podcast on our community platform that's powered by Hivebrite. And I think one of the most interesting things that we actually did was, okay, we're providing content, events. Now we need to make conversion happen. So there are just so many things that are part of running a successful community and launching and running. And one of the things is that, okay, how do we make sure that people sign up to the platform, become members, and then from becoming members, how to make sure that they join events and they listen to the podcast and they actually engage with others. They apply for jobs and they connect. So it's all of this conversion, you're always missing someone or losing them along the way. So I think that's something that was very interesting. And a bit of a challenge because, of course, the community is global. So people are everywhere. They're not just in one location.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point that you mentioned as well, having both events and like different things on the platform that people can take advantage of. I'm wondering, how did you manage your event strategy versus like online events or in-person events, especially in this post-pandemic world?
Yeah, I think it's very exciting. People still join online events. And, you know, I think when like COVID happened and the pandemic started, we're like, when they're over, everybody's going to go back offline. And no, not really. So I think it's a good split. I think with events, like something that's important to take into consideration. So for us, for example, this is one of the things that work. Events is like our biggest, like people really love coming to events, exchange with people. They're able to make like those meaningful connections that we advocate so passionately. So it's really hard. So of course you have the part of like events organization that of course takes a lot of like time. And then something that we do, of course, is that once we set up the event, we run campaigns to make sure that they sign up. So we have usually like 2 to 3 touches per campaign, both to our members, which are like over 150, and to the newsletter subscribers, because some of the events are going to be open to the public and not just the community. So we can also do some kind of recruiting for new members. And they can be very good, like as company do employer branding, we do this kind of community branding. So we use events as a community branding tool. After that, I think with events, like something that I didn't know before because I've never worked in the events business or anything, is that events can have a very high rate of no-shows. So with online events, it's a bit higher. While with, for example, with in-person events, maybe it's like a 20-30% no-show. So it's important to make adjustments and make sure. So we always send a confirmation the day before and the day off, just to make sure that we have the right number. Still, a few people are still gonna no-show, you know, on the day at the time. So events are time-consuming, but for us, for example, they're the things that works best for engaging members.
And after events, what would you say is like the biggest kind of draw to your community?
I think the quality network. So for example, for us, like the community was so important because the people, they are the community. In the end, like we're all here talking about communities, but what's a community? It's just like people getting together around the same values, the same vision, same interests. There's a beautiful book that I suggest to everyone. It's called The Business of Belonging. So if you're in the process of launching a community or even like brainstorming one, I think it's just a great book for any community manager out there. And for us, for example, the biggest draw was the people and events. So you go to the events, why? Because you can meet the people. You listen to the podcast, why? Because you can meet people. So I think the people component was very important for us. Like, how can we make sure that we have a strong community, that we have a quality community? And that's so hard because you want to, of course, be inclusive and let everyone in, but you also want to make sure that it stays interesting for the people to join. Like we said, okay, it's for people in tech, but maybe we also open it up for people with an affinity in tech. So where does the affinity in tech stops for us, for example? So it's really hard to say, okay, this is going to be where we stop and the cutoff. So like, I think this was one of the tough parts. So we said, okay, it's a value-based community, so values are important. So when people actually request to join, so our community, for example, is not an open one. Not anyone can buy a membership. People apply for it. It's a very short application form, like nothing crazy, because otherwise, again, conversion kind of drops. But what they do is that they can give us more information as to their background, which company were they part of, organization. And yeah, if someone referred them, And this, for example, was a great way for us to make sure that we had, and which values they resonate the most of our 3 values, which are like being passionate, unconventional, and connection, and believing in like genuine connection. So I think people was the biggest kind of, the biggest thing that people are drawn. And then, like it's our community really works on referral. So we do have a strong referral program and members recognition program. So we really want to encourage people to refer others, because if someone is a good fit, it's potentially like people in their network that work also in tech, they're also a good fit.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. You want like values and more people that share your values coming into the community. So why not ask your community to invite those people?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay. So now you've conceptualized your community, you've invited everyone in. What is your next step in terms of getting your members to come back to the community, continuously engage and kind of, connect with everyone? What are your strategies there, or what have they been?
Yeah, I'd say adoption is the tough cookie, So looking back now, 6 months in and like 9 months since the inception and conception of it, the prepping the community was the easy part, thinking about the target audience, who are we catering, what are we doing. I think adoption, one of the key points is consistency and discipline and staying true to your values. This is on a very high level. Some people in the audience are probably community managers, but some of them, maybe they're just doing community on the side. Like in many organizations, community is just another part. And for me, like I also do have a full-time job. So community is something I do. So how do you prioritize activities that drive adoption when you have limited time to dedicate to it? And when you're a community manager, you're wearing like so many different hats. Again, you're an event organizer, you are like a podcast host, and like I've been doing everything. So for us, like adoption, so the 2 points are, of course, like acquisition and retention. So acquisition takes a lot of time because people don't know about you. So how you tell the story and kind of draw them in, and this is the part that we just discussed, but adoption is also not that easy. So how do you make sure that people who are part of the community are coming to that first event? Because in the end, some people sign up, they pay the membership fee, they are a member. Like how many people in the audience, for example, already paid a membership and then never use it? Like you sign up for the gym and then you never go. Like so many of us, like we just sign up for something and then we forget to go, or it's just an aspirational part of us. So how do we make sure that we can actually do that first conversion, And because when people come to that first event, they are way more likely to come to the second, the third, and so on.
So it's kind of a first impression thing. It's true in online communities as well.
Yeah. So what we realized, for example, for adoption, and that's why, so in the beginning, events were events for the community only. So now we have 2 types of events. The dinners are only if you're a member. So of course, it's a more intimate chance to network, a bit less dispersive, and just for members. And then we have larger events that are like workshops, seminars, and so on, with about maybe 100 people joining, and where we have like speakers coming from companies. Like we ran an event here in Amsterdam a few weeks ago on understanding the role of unconscious bias in the tech industry. And we invited people. So we used that acquisition motion to get people to already be at that first event. So use the event as a hook, and then adoption is going to go way faster. So you see many things where in the adoption part we're adjusting. Like we knew we wanted to do events, and now we are just working, okay, what kind of events makes people come back more? Like what do people want to come to? So like it's a lot of things. The podcast is also like another great way to keep people coming back. So we have 1/2 episodes coming per week. So every time there's a new podcast episode, we can tell people, hey, new podcast alert, and they get kind of like a little peek into the topic, and then they can go listen and again log in the community. We do have a community platform, and I think one of the hardest things is to get people to come again after the first login. Yeah, so great. Events, of course, they help because they need to log in and sign up. The podcast, we now also launch like jobs. And jobs have been, of course, like another way that people come back, like because they come back to apply if they are on the lookout for a new job. But then otherwise, I think it's quite hard to create that muscle of coming back to the community, both virtually and physically. So you really need to see, okay, what's bringing them back? Like, why are people logging back in today? Oh, because we published a new event, because we sent a newsletter that's telling them to come and check out the new events for the next month. So you really need to build that muscle for them, because so in the book, The Business of Belonging, I'm missing the name of the writer now. I feel so bad. He's the founder of CMX, by the way. So like it's a great voice in the industry. Very, very sorry, I don't remember it. But he says 80% of your community will be passive and 20% will be active. So it's also adoption. I think something that's very important is to identify the 20%. David Spring, someone said it. Yay, thank you. Sorry, I felt so bad about that. But I read so many books to remember like all the authors. So you need to work on that 20% to make sure that they're going to attract more people. So something, for example, we did for adoption was, of course, we're based in Amsterdam and we're running like a global community, which is part of one of the challenges we were mentioning before. So what we did is that we actually said, okay, we're going to have some connection advocates. That's the name we gave to them in the city. So we asked the community, do you want to lead like events in your city as a volunteer? And you would be surprised of how many people actually said yes and joined as connection advocate. And they were able, of course, to draw in more people. So one of the benefits we give to them is they get a lifelong membership and they can give like 10 one-year free membership to their friends. So this was great for acquisition, but also like if someone else is hosting an event, his or her friends or people in the network and are going to come to support. So it's great for that adoption piece. The community really works as a network. So you need to work on every connection to make it stronger for communities to grow in numbers and grow, of course, also like in what's the percentage of active members that you actually have?
Yeah, I found that communities also really love just stories. They love to know who's in the community, what their experience has been. So it's really cool to see people like making those connections and then like sharing those stories within the community, which sounds like you're already doing through all the different, ways that you're connecting with your community. So it's awesome.
Yeah, I think branding is so important. What is the community branding we were talking about before? So we use, of course, like social media very intensely to tell our story. So we have like something we call members highlights. So where we ask members to share a quote. And again, how do we know people who want to share a quote? So of course, in the beginning, in the first few months, we were reaching out to friends that are part of it and say, hey, do you want to leave a quote for our LinkedIn? But now we actually integrated in the request to join form. Do you want to support us? And for example, come as a guest on the podcast or share a quote for our members highlights, become a connection advocate. So we also are giving them option to tell us how they want to help. And then we just need to reach out. And this makes the job like very, very easy.
Nice. It's smart that you have that like set up from the beginning. So like they already know how they can participate in like all the different ways. Nice. Cool. So I guess now I'm wondering, maybe some of our audience as well, are there any things that you might have done differently as you started out, as you were creating and launching your community?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's so many, Whitney, if I have to be honest with you. Like, I think like we are like on just this learning journey, like with the community. So I think one of the main things that I would have done differently, I think it would have been, so the podcast is something we knew we wanted to do. So in the beginning, we were like, okay, we're going to have like 3 main things: connection, experience, and learn. So connection is going to be the network. So again, you tap into that in different ways. Experience is going to be the events, but online and offline. So online, we ran from like, rock your LinkedIn profile because we are ex-LinkedIn employees, but me and Nasty, to like I Am Remarkable Google training. And then we also have the learning part. So how are we going to share like learning with our members? Are we going to share, for example, templates for CVs and resume? Are we going to like, what are we going to give as a value for them to learn and advance as professionals? And so we knew we wanted to do like a podcast, but then we didn't really know how and well. And in the beginning, we're like, okay, we're just going to launch and then we're going to figure it out. And this is like a mindset that helped me a lot in many other ways, like kind of to, go gather, like let's start and then we can solve that in later. With content, the issue is that it takes a lot of time to create it. So we found out pretty soon that if you want to have like a successful like podcast, and again, content could look like different for different people. So for some people, maybe it's some presentation, is an online event. So you need to curate the content there. So it can be, or you want to create videos and courses. So you can cater to the community like in different ways. But the podcast takes a lot of time, post-production, recording. I mean, Hivebrite also has a podcast, so you guys probably know. So one of the things I think looking back is that I would have prepped the content way in advance to be covered. So now, for example, we have all of our episodes already scheduled to be published until July. And it means that I'm not feeling like that I'm not breathing because, like, oh my God, we need to do that, and that. So I think planning for content, and the same with the members highlights, like it's something that every week we were looking for a quote. It would have been easier to just gather everything and then schedule the content. So I think, kind of planning content, I think it's one of the biggest mistakes. Like now we are pacing, but we had to put like a lot of work, like in January to record like few podcast episodes per day. So to be covered for like 30 weeks or something.
Yeah, especially you're covering yourself if anyone at any point in time is like sick and you're kind of like not able to keep up with the kind of flow you've set up, you have that just like kind of tucked away and ready to go for sure.
Yeah, you wouldn't guess how many reschedule happened for like this podcast recording. It's just crazy. So yeah, so for me, like the thing is that looking back, I think planning content, because launching the community, like every week you have something. So we have a monthly newsletter. The newsletter takes time. For every event, we're going to send like those 3 touches of email before, confirmation on the day of, and a thank you email after. Like all of these like needs to be like, we kind of found it out on the way. So like, oh, maybe if we have an event, we need to send a thank you email. So I think now there's so many resources online. So going back, or for whoever in the audience who's like thinking to launch, I was like, okay, what is going to be your communication? Like, how are you going to communicate with the community? How often? And kind of plan the templates. Like there's ChatGPT now, so it's very easy to do, but like let's just a bit more planning into the real deal in the end, what you're going to be doing day to day, week to week. So this, I think, one of the greatest like misconception is that you have the part where you're planning, you're thinking about the audience. How are you going to monetize? How are you going to reach out to new people? What you're going to do? But then like, okay, events, what are the events going to look like? How am I going to find speakers? How am I going to contact people? How am I going to invite people? Which templates do I need? So now we have everything, but because we learned by doing. So yeah, going back, I would have a bit more planning on the content side.
Gotcha. Yeah, for sure. I think that can take some time, and it's really nice that you have like your perfect flow. So yeah, I guess my last question for you is about how are you measuring success within your community now that you've kind of mastered all the different like steps leading up to making it a thriving community? What are you checking in on a regular basis to make sure that you're kind of meeting those goals that you set for yourself?
Yeah, so I'd say we do have a lot of metrics, but we come from sales, so everything needs to be accounted for. And so I think it's part of part of our background. But yeah, so first, for example, is of course like community members. So of course we track how many people are in the community, how many people do we have in the back office of Hivebrite. So, and I also can see a question, someone asked if we use Hivebrite for all touch points, and yes, we do. So this is the platform where we do everything on Hivebrite for event management, communications, media center for the podcast, and so on. And what we do there, we also track, of course, the people that we have in the back office. So people who are signed up or gave us their email, but they haven't activated yet. So when I refer to the newsletter subscribers, that's what I'm referring to, is people who we have their email, but they haven't activated their profile yet. So, and we have about 1,700 now. So we track, of course, so the kind of people in the back office, number of members that have activated their profile, We also track outreach. So every week we do outreach on LinkedIn. It's very salesy, I know, but basically to, of course, do that part of acquisition for new members. We do track content and events. So how many podcasts? So we have a plan for the rest of the year on a very simple Google Sheet, and we are planning everything. So how many podcasts do we want to have by the end of the year? 52, let's say, one per week. And we track it every week, how we're pacing, how many did we record it? And of course, we also track for the podcast that's public for acquisitions on Spotify, we track listens and so on, streams. Something else we tracked is jobs on the platform. So of course, we want to make sure we always have new content and new jobs. So we want to make sure that we are growing by 10 jobs per week, for example, just to give you the number specifically. On Hivebrite, something that's very good, you can also track the kind of activity engagement rate. So what percentage of your community is coming back to log in and to engage. So we also do track that. And one last thing, I'm really thinking now. So we do have a lot of metrics. We have 30 of them. So now I'm just trying to put them together. But yeah, it's mainly podcast events, community. We track requests to joins. So how many people request to be part of the community per week. So yeah, those are just some of the metrics, but we have more. So if you have more questions about the metrics, feel free to ask, because there's a bit more.
Yes, I love that. It's really great to have that frame of mind. And are you tracking this on kind of a weekly or a monthly basis? What is the best you're tracking?
Yeah, so we do weekly. I think weekly really works for us, because also we are in the very beginning. So we're tracking numbers that are growing hopefully very fast every week. So we normally are growing by 20 to 30 activation per week. So new members per week. So which is, considering we launched 6 months ago, for us, it's a big number.
Honestly, for sure. I feel like your community has grown so much in such a short period of time. That's awesome.
Yeah, thanks.
Cool. So I guess those are all of my questions for today. Is there anything else that you'd like to share? Any questions? I haven't been checking the chat as much, but I'll soon get to that Q&A box. But anything you've seen in the chat that you want to address?
Yeah, someone said, Mark said, job tracking is an interesting metric to watch. And yeah, so I'm just going to expand a bit more on that. But for us, jobs are content. So of course, it's a professional community, and jobs are just one content that our members can engage with. So the reason for us was really just, we want to make sure that the content is growing, so more members have more content to engage with. And of course, because our member is tech industry means everything and nothing, it's people. Some jobs are customer success, data analytics, developers, sales, finance. There's so much in it. We need to make sure that we have enough jobs that we're catering to the large enough population we have. But yeah, we can go to the questions now. Very excited.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I was just taking.
I saw the chat really active, so I'm very curious to see what the questions are.
Yes. All right. Let me see. Answer this one live. How does your referral program work?
Yeah, so our referral program works. So what we do is that we send an email campaign for members talking about the referral program. So every month in our newsletter, we then announce who are the 3 members who referred the most members into the community. How do we track that? So on Hivebrite, when people do the request to join, there's a box saying, if you were referred by a member of the network, what's their name? They can leave the name. So for example, if I'm referring you to the platform, you can put my name down. And then what we do is that we're tracking on a Google Sheet, all the requests to joins that are incoming, the referral, and we just count it out. The way to kind of encourage people to refer members is that a members who referred into the system get 6 months free. So that's how we are doing it. So this is kind of the incentive for the person who's referred. And the people who are on the top 3 of our members recognition program for the month, they get some swag from our D2 Collective swag. So we get in touch with them, we ask for their address, and we send something their way with a card, just in a way that's very personal. And I think it's a good touch to bring the community offline to their doorstep. Then some of them, they share it on LinkedIn. So it's very good also like for branding in general.
Cool. We have another question here from Surace Bakshi. She said, Erica, what was the biggest challenge you faced before launching your online community on Hivebrite? And what are all the things that you would not recommend to do before the launch?
Can you just repeat the question? Sorry, because I think there's two parts to the question. So
yes, sorry.
So I'm just gonna take it one by one. Sorry, my memory is very bad. It's like 6 p.m. Sorry.
No worries. So the first part of the question is, what was the biggest challenge you faced before launching your community on Hivebrite? And then I'll give you the second one after.
Okay. So biggest challenge we faced was, really understanding where we cater, like doing that kind of market research. So understanding where we're catering for. Do they need it? Like, this is the main question. Like, do they need what we're offering? So I think it's really understanding who is like your target audience, as we mentioned, speaking with those people, understanding what do they need, like, do they see this gap? I think like a lot of people when launching like a company or a community or whatever, like we want to see a gap in need or maybe there's not. So it's also about being very honest and saying, do we need it or not? If it's on Hivebrite specifically, because I think the question also asked that, I think Hivebrite makes it very easy and it's just a very complete platform where you can get like so much. So it actually inspired that we could do more. We decided not to launch all the different features because we're going to do more of like a gradual launch.
Mm-hmm. And then the second question was, what are all the things that you would not recommend doing before your launch?
So I wouldn't postpone launch too much. Like I would really go into launch as soon as you can, because the real work starts after. So prep as much as you can prep, as you can plan and think, but then a community is driven by the people. So if you haven't launched, you don't have a community. Like it's as easy as that, so you need to be launching to be having a community and to be working as managing a community. So I'd say in general, just don't delay launch too much.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I have another question here from Patrick Gore, and his question is around engagement. So how do you encourage engagement when you first launch the community, and how do you get people to use it? I think this is something you've already touched on, but maybe.
Yeah. So this is something that's been, it's ongoing. So as mentioned, like adoption takes time. I think for us, what we do is that we try to get them to come to the events, because then this is the best kind of business card that we can offer. They get to network, they get to enjoy the content, like they get connection, experience, and learning, which are kind of the three pillars that we mentioned. So so I'd say in general, engagement needs to be encouraged. So drive them with, of course, like newsletters and content, getting great speakers for the events. I think that's also very important. Like really deliver the value. Like don't do an event just because you can do an event. Try to say, what do they need? Go back to that kind of drawing board of like target audience and like, what do they want to talk about? Like for us, for example, for the podcast, we're like, okay, we can invite people we know to talk, or we can reach out to speakers that are a bit out of our reach. And we can do it on LinkedIn, but to talk about great topics. So we have like an episode that's been going super well on navigating layoffs, but the ROI of flexible work. So we are talking about the things that our community wants to talk about, that are the hot topics in the industry now.
Gotcha. Cool. I have another question from Roy Jolly. Erica, do your members pay the cost of the platform, or is it underwritten? If underwritten, is that by a company or a professional organization? So I guess the question is more so in general, what is your monetization strategy and how is that kind of like implemented?
Yeah, so our monetization is based on memberships. So, and I think there was another question about how do we set up the pricing. So I'm going to include that into. So we thought, okay, this is a community, we're going to put work in it. We want to monetize it because hopefully this is going to be our full-time job at some point. So we want to really work on this. So the first part that we did is that we went to our first degree network and we offered like a lifelong membership. So we got the members. I think this is because otherwise, imagine if you have, like for me, like, and for us, like the idea was we were asking people to pay for something that didn't have any value yet. Because even if you launch event, but if you don't have community members, like, and enjoy, like our main part is connection, networks, meaningful connection. Like, why should I pay if there's no network to join? So in the beginning, we did our first connection on LinkedIn, people we used to work with and so on. And we gave them like a lifelong membership. And then we start in the beginning, we said, okay, we're going to do like a yearly membership because monthly is going to be just another expense. I feel all of us really hate to see like those monthly subscriptions coming, and maybe that month you didn't use it. So you're like, oh, I'm going to cancel it. So we went for a yearly one in the beginning. And now we actually did a lifelong. So we want people to get in and pay that lifelong membership. So they're part of the community. Like for us, it's more important to get that like kind of lifelong value, and we can upsell and cross-sell in different way with events, for example. So I in general, like the monetization part was with membership. We do have also like other kind of revenue streams now that came because we built a successful community. So we have companies commissioning us events. So we go and we became the events manager for them, and we do everything. And we organize like internal events, external events. So I think then the community, it's kind of going to show yourself other way to monetize. We do have sponsor for our newsletter and our podcast. So as soon as you have those numbers running, then you can monetize that also like in more indirect ways.
Nice. I have another question from Helen Beaumont. Would you recommend testing the community with a small group before a bigger launch?
Yes, but I'm going to give you a bit more information about it. Yes and no. So yes, in the sense that community is a long-term business. So even like a short time testing, you need to be in for the long run. So if the testing is what we discussed before, and again, this is just my opinion. So like kind of testing, running surveys with people that are potential parts, running like few small events. And then, I don't know, I'm just, of course, making some example based on our community. I would say yes. If it is like, oh, I'm going to get a cheaper platform, for example, because the platform is a part of it, and then move everyone to another like bigger platform, this never works. My suggestion in terms of community platform starts with what is going to work like 5 years from now, because people are not going to move. Like there's so many different communities that have started on Facebook maybe, and then they're like, oh, I want to move the community somewhere else. And it's so hard for them to actually bring people to a community platform, make them pay. So I'd say one of the things is that I'd say testing, yes, in the sense that, again, we need to make sure that there is that need that we discussed about. But also like at some point you just need to start. What is the testing going to be like? Is it going to be like, what do you want to make sure? So make sure that you have your KPIs as like for any proof of concept, like what do you want to make out of it? Like that there is a need, that there is like a minimum percentage of show up, that there is like, you can run a survey if like what people want and if it's feasible. So feasibility, give yourself 3 months and then say, okay, either I'm going to go all in. And it means that for the next like 18 to 36 months, I'm committed to making this thing a success, or just drop it. It's fine. Like not everyone is made for long-term projects. Like I'm the last person to judge. So I'd say in general, this is like what I personally like deem important in testing.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. You don't want to have too much friction in trying to move from one platform to another and kind of like, just get everyone where you want them to be from the beginning and then like keep growing that out. I love that. Yes, another question kind of related from Sherlim. Could you please share a bit more on your needs assessment before deciding that Hivebrite was the right choice?
Yeah, so for us, we made an Excel and we decided, okay, so again, going back, so we said, okay, what is our community? Who is the audience? What do they need? How are we going to respond to the need? So we knew we need to have events. So an event management platform that was very complete. We didn't know if we wanted to do like paid events or not. So of course we needed like kind of a ticketing option on the platform. Not many platforms have it. Hivebrite does, and it's a great one. Connects with Stripe. It's very seamless. Like it works super well. Second point was we wanted, a kind of a communications / like campaign management internal, and Hivebrite as it. We wanted to have a way to share media for the learning part, so also that. And Hivebrite for me like was very beautiful in the way you have the map, and I think like this is the part that people like the most. So people log in and they have the map. So I think this is just great. Like they love to see where people are on the map. We have a global community, so it's nice to see. I mean, we have like 100 members in the US, and still like it's so nice to see that they're all in different parts of the States, and also in Europe to see like all those different like little dots with their pictures. So I think these were kind of the main components, but then we were also looking at the future, like what do we want to do in the future? And Hivebrite offers donations. Like we don't know if we're going to be opening like donations at some point. We wanted to do membership. So of course, membership was also one of the kind of staples. It has like a forum. So we knew we wanted to launch forums and jobs. And this actually we did. So we launched jobs in December and forum last month. So yeah, I think there's so much. There's like a project, module where you can have like, where you can display all the different kind of projects that people have and their startups. So this is a great way for members, for example, to come and tell us more about them. So this is one of the way to get them to log in again. So I think these were the things that kind of, Hivebrite was the most complete platform out there. And it was going to serve us not only today, but also like 5 years from now. We are not going to need to move those people at some point because Hivebrite has everything we need.
Nice. And it's cool to know that you don't have to kind of like roll that out all at once. You can take your time and like build your community and make certain things available when it makes the most sense for your community.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%.
Yeah, it looks like we have two similar questions. So I'll just read this one from Eve Simonatio. Sorry if I butchered your last name. She said, I'd like to know more about how you invited users to the community, which channels were you using, and which content did you focus on to start? So I can repeat the last part later.
Yeah, so I think it's more about acquisition in general. I can take you over the acquisition strategy. So in terms of acquisition, what we did, again, we started from our LinkedIn, but again, this is like a professional community. If you're running a community on, I don't know, boat lovers, probably you're going to go somewhere else. You're going to go at the airport and look at the boats and connect with people. So for us, like LinkedIn was the place to be. So we started from our network, like inviting people on that first, again, lifelong membership that we mentioned before, free membership. And then from there, we said, okay, let's referrals. So people, you can refer all of your friends, other potential members that are a good fit, and of course fits like the value and kind of the tech affinity of the community. So the second step in our acquisition strategy was the referral program. So we started to encourage people to refer, get them in with the members recognition program. And then we started in December to actually reach out to people on LinkedIn and saying, hey, we have a community in your city. There's a very active hub. Do you want to join? If so, just give us your email and we're going to send you an invitation. So that's something we did to actually start inviting people. So this, of course, it's very salesy, but again, we come from a sales background, both of us, the founders. And then we have all of the content. So we have been using LinkedIn, Instagram, and the podcast on Spotify and other to be honest, it's called Closer in Tech. I invite you to go listen because there's a lot of content and we're really focused on like bringing like very good speakers onto the podcast. So I think those have been our acquisition strategies. You need to see what works for you. I think in our community and our industry more widely, like people are a lot on LinkedIn and they talk a lot about these topics, about layoffs, about D&I. They talk about, so those are hot topics for like employee engagement, putting your employees first. So we kind of brought that back into like our content strategy.
Nice. Yeah, I think you keep saying similar things, but it's really just you keep listening to your community and kind of replicating and creating what they want to see.
Yeah, absolutely.
Stephen Sharks has a question. He says, have you considered any type of traditional advertising to attract members, such as radio or billboards?
Yeah, absolutely. They cost money though, and we were totally bootstrapping. So I'd say, yeah, so now we're starting to, of course, like raise more money from the memberships and from like different sponsorship events and so on that I was mentioning before. So now it's something that we're looking into. So in the beginning was really, we just need to get to a good LT number so that we can show that basically this is our proof of concept. This is our testing, like this first 6 months to prove that people actually are marrying into the concept that we created. So I think in the future, it's something we're going to be looking at, LinkedIn ads, mostly I'd say. And something we did actually for marketing acquisition, we did a bit of like guerrilla marketing. I don't know if it's like legal in all countries. So I'm just going to say because here it can be done, which is, so we printed our QR code on a little with the request to join, written, do you work in tech? And we put it a bit all over. So this has been great actually to get new requests to joins. And like the conversion is not super high. I think it's like 10% of people who actually scan, fill in the form. But it was quite good, to be honest, because we did it when there were like some tech events. So we did it in conjunction to real life things happening.
I love the mystery of like, do you work in tech? And then
do you work it? So it's like, it's just because of course our colors are like black and white. So it was just a black sticker with like, do you work in tech, and the QR code. And so people were just, of course, you're very enticed to scan it.
Cool. We have another question here. I'm not sure if this is something you've had to manage in your community yet, but how do you handle any negative interactions on your community, especially in the early stages?
We haven't had it yet. So this shows you that we're not as big as we could be. So not yet, but I'm gonna be very curious. We got some feedback, like for example, so we got some not positive, some negative feedback. So with one event that we did, this one of understanding the role of unconscious bias in the tech industry, it was a large event, about 80 people joining, great speakers, global head of diversity and inclusion from Deliveroo, Miro, and Reactor, and it was such a great event, great energy. And someone at the end actually came and said, oh, I wish it was a bit more deep into the topics. So with a bit more like tips, practical and so on, while so many other people actually came and said, oh, this was like way deeper than any other event I attend. So of course, like there's no one size fits all. Like we are trying to cater to an audience where people are going to be at different levels. So with this kind of like content heavy event, it's hard to know if people already know a lot or not. So what we did, we actually asked for tips of what we could have covered, and yeah, we just accepted the feedback. I think it's great feedback, and it's a reminder that there's no one size fits all in communities or in life, you know?
Mm-hmm, for sure. Tina H is also curious to know, how do you govern your community? That's kind of a similar question.
Like, do you mean in terms of like moderation? Or
that's all I have, but I'll let you interpret that as you will.
I don't know, you're the native speaker. So for me, like, yeah, I always govern it. Yeah, I'd say in terms of moderation, we haven't had to do much so far. All interactions have been, very meaningful, very authentic, very genuine, which I think connects to another question that I saw very interesting about with the rise of AI. Is word of mouth kind of the best way to interact? And I think people still trust people. So it's true that we might sign up for a service or just something that we see in an ad. But when actually a friend recommends something or someone we know, it carries like way more value. So when I was working at LinkedIn and talking and advising like companies on their recruitment strategies, one of the things was like, okay, you can put out like a job ad and get some application. They're not going to be amazing maybe, but you know, you put it in front of enough people on different boards, you're going to get those applications. Or you can reach out proactively to people who are a good fit, and then it's going to be way better quality. But the best quality for like all recruiting like organization stays referral, because good talent knows talent. So usually if you have someone who's a very good cultural fit for your organization or community in this case, the people in their network, they are also like likely to be a very good fit.
Okay, it looks like we're almost out of time. I'm going to find one more question here.
So many questions. Thank you so much for asking like a way. I want to say that if anyone wants to connect like on LinkedIn, I'm happy to just, continue answering the questions. Like I'm very open for that.
Yeah, these are really awesome and interesting questions, especially as you're starting and kind of getting everything, launched. It's really interesting to know like what are these top of mind questions. Edmund Leong has a question about incorporating DEI metrics into the community, such as having a minimum percentage of female or POC members. Is that something that you all have thought about?
Yeah. So I think we shared like in the initial slide, our community. So we do have quite of a fair split. Something that we noticed, for example, is that in-person events, not the one on the EI, but all the others, we had way more men than women joining. And of course, like this is something that's important to start noticing and look at. So we actually started running metrics. Of course, after the events, we have a list of all the people who signed up and basically saying, okay, what attended, who didn't attend? Is maybe like a woman feeling a bit more, like, is it more threatening for a woman to join like an in-person meeting if she's never met people? So we need to find a way to make that easier. So I think the EI metrics can be very good also just to give you indication of what's working and not in your community. Like dinners, for example, works better than drinks to have a more equal and balanced audience. Some of the workshops and events, they see more of like a women participants, for example, in the learning part. So we are trying to make the community as inclusive as possible. We're looking at the metrics. And I think it's important to start in the very beginning. So this is something we actually made a prerogative in the beginning so that we don't get lost later down the line.
Cool. Well, this has been really amazing. Thank you so much, Erica, for your time. Thank you, everyone that has joined us, for all of your great questions. Yeah, this is great. I really appreciated this. And I feel like I'm walking away with some really good feedback and some tips myself about community.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Like, it was great to tell more about the community. I feel we could talk about those topics for a very long time. So I hope everyone found it like very useful. And again, you can connect with me on LinkedIn if you want. I think it was on the chat. So yeah, looking forward to connect.
Yes. Also, I do want to share that today's webinar, it has been recorded and it'll be sent to you all via email. And then also we have a survey that'll be in the chat for you to complete. So if you have a minute to just really give us some feedback, tell us how this was for you, and if you've learned some new tips today. And yeah, thank you so much. This is great. Thanks, Erica, and thanks everyone.
Thank you.
All right. Have a great day. Bye.
Bye.